How's it going out there tonight?
Whoa. You stumped me now.
Check out our website, mannimalresearch.com. Thanks to everybody. Hello. How's it going out there tonight? All of you that will join us live tonight, and those of you that will catch it later, we sure do appreciate your support. Thank you very, very much, guys. I'm joined tonight I can't say as always because he's proved me wrong the last couple of weeks, but I am joined pretty regularly by my partner in crime there, Mr. Walls, that still has not figured out not to eat on a live program. How's it going, buddy?
Said I was cooking supper.
An hour ago? How long does it take to cook and eat?
I have a new pit boss grill. It takes a little while to get prepped.
How's it going? How you doing, man? What's up?
Said I was cooking supper.
What's going on with you?
Not much, man. Actually went out to, which everybody knows, live on the Facebook last night. Went out to the battlefield and had a pretty good, somewhat fun out there. It was pretty good.
Yeah. You invited me to go out with you. First off, before we get into that, I want to say happy birthday to the old man there. His birthday was Friday. He had a little birthday get together yesterday, which is Saturday. So I come by and hung out with him and some of his family and friends. Had a good time. And yeah, you asked me to come out with you last night, but just I wasn't able to. And I watched some of it. I do want to go back and watch the rest of it. I read a comment about something walking in the wood line. What happened there?
I went. I kind of just started out, doing a video as I was going down the road areas, telling people about the story about the green eyes, kind of touching on what has happened out there, certain things. And I got to the tower, which everybody's famous about the towers where usually green eyes is at. Got there, pretty quiet, nothing there. Got to the spot where I told you I had the encounter where I thought I had something screaming in the woods at that time, and went back to that little spot and actually got out in the car, stayed quiet, panning. It was a good night too, man. If I had a good, Patrick was on there last night, and he suggested get 2 axe handles, and if I had that, I believe I probably would have got something different. But I did do a couple of whistles like I usually do with our investigation, and did like 60 seconds like he was talking about. Didn't really hear them come back. Heard distance like coyotes kind of over to my back of my side, and the next thing I hear this something huge, like it a couple steps to the side, like it was slowly moving sideways. And my hair, man, and I had my wife with me, so
you ain't got no hair, dude. Rephrase that.
I have enough hair. But it made me I was like, uh-oh. I said something's in the woods. I said I didn't take nothing with me, just the phone. Had her with me, and I was like, I said, no, I ain't gonna, I'm brave usually, but not tonight. No. But plenty of beers. Plenty of deers was out there. I mean, they were out there. It was a nice night. Very nice night. Clear sky and everything.
Yeah, I was telling Jordan about your theory about them being out there at the battlefield, and I'll admit, the first time you brought that up when we first, got into this, a couple years ago almost, I thought that was stupid. There was no way there would be Bigfoot, Sasquatch in the battlefield. It's just it's visited by too many people, and I mean it's in a town, and I just didn't think there was any way. But the more points you made to me, and the more I thought about it and looked at it from an aerial map, like Google Earth, it's butted up to the very mountain where we've had all of our activity.
Yeah.
So the access is there. Like you said, there's deer everywhere. You cannot drive through that place day or night without running into a dozen deer. So there's a good food supply there. There's place for them to drink. There's shelter. The place is huge. It's all wooded, and it's connected to a mountain that runs into Walker County, which has all of the BFRO sightings, or all 5 of the sightings from Walker County are connected to that mountain, and the battlefield is at the base of this mountain.
Yep. And I got a hit from one of Greg's friends, actually text me and sent me a friend's request on Facebook that is over near Trine. I figured I'd get with you on that one. They've had encounter. Something's happened out there, and she wanted us to come. It was a lady. She wanted us to come out and actually see, maybe walk around and see if they see anything. I said, let me get with my buddy Wayne. And
Where's this at?
It's in Trine, Georgia, south of Lafayette. Like, if you look, it's the south side on the other side of the mountain that we've been talking about. It's further south. So, yeah. But yeah, it was pretty cool last night. Got that hit, and I was like, cool.
So we have somebody that wants us to come out and do an investigation of our property
and check it out. Yeah, and see if they, I was like, yeah, let me get with him and we'll see what we can do to set up something.
Set that up, man. We'll get out there, try to get out there as soon as possible.
Yeah.
And have a look around. Yeah, let me know. Send me an email or something. Let me know the details on that place, like how many acres she has and what's going on. Like why does she think there's something there, and why does she think she needs someone like us?
Right. She also mentioned that we could actually stay out there.
And overnight. Nice.
They got like some kind of like a store or something out there. Said, but out there in the field, so we can stay out there. And I was like, okay, that would be cool. We could do a night one too, possibly. Make it a big kind of deal. But.
Very cool. Very cool. All right, guys, it's a little bit late getting into this, but like always, hit that subscribe button if you don't mind. Show us some love. Sure would appreciate it. Head over to mannimalresearch.com. Check out our website. Submit your encounters. Get some information about maybe even becoming a member of Mannimal, getting out and doing your own research. Because I was contacted by a lady this week. I responded to her email today, and I'll be sending her over to you probably tonight here, Walls. We'll let you take care of that. You introduce yourself to her and kind of get a feel of what she's looking for. She actually told me she had an encounter where she almost ran into one, like literally almost ran into one. So eager to hear what's happened there. But yeah, guys, all she did, she went to the website and she submitted a contact there, and it went straight to me. And like, I handle some and Walls handle some, and that's what we do. So guys, go to our website, mannimalresearch.com, and check it out and get a hold of us.
Oh yeah. Are you gonna be free Saturday night?
I don't know. I don't know of anything planned. Maybe.
Well, I've already. They wanted me to go back out again, so me and the wife decided after I get back from wrestling, indie wrestling this weekend from Pikeville, which my buddy Brandon's watching. Appreciate it, Brandon. See you, buddy. That we're gonna do another live down there, and if you can, maybe I'll take the thermal with me and see what I'm gonna get. The sticks and get some rocks and see if I can get something to come out. I think there's like I said, there's plenty of deer there. Now I've been there during paranormal time that you would not see one deer. Something had them. They was gone somewhere, and they would not be there at all. But
yeah,
so if you're free, man,
might be able to work that out. I can make that happen.
That could be cool.
And Also, guys, Mannimal Research on Facebook. Join our Facebook group. You know you got a Facebook. Everybody does. So why not be a member of our group? You're probably a member of 100 others. Just add us to it. Come see what we've got going on. Share some stuff over there. As always tonight, guys, feel free to ask those questions to our guests. Yeah, like I said, feel free to ask questions, but if you do so, please put those in all caps so that we can see them quickly and get to them so that my buddy Walls there can see them, and he will relay them to me, and I'll get them up on the screen, and we'll get them asked for you. But put them all in caps so that we can see them, if you don't mind, guys. Mannimal Encounters Mannimal Encounters at yahoo.com. It's just a way, guys, for you to send in your encounters. Send it over to that email address, manimal-encounters at yahoo.com, and we will read them on our Mannimal Encounters segment. So, yeah, got all that out of the way. Now we get to talk about the real reason you guys are here, which is to hear our guest. Tonight, we are very, very honored and pleased to be welcoming Mr. Todd Neiss to the program. Todd is the founder of the American Primate Conservancy. Todd is also ex-military. You know how we feel about that, so we'll be thanking him for his service. I'm sure you guys will be too. Make sure that you do that. But yeah, really, really excited about having him on. Been looking forward to this one for a while. And we're about 12 minutes in. So if you're ready, buddy, we'll go ahead and get Todd on.
Yeah, let's bring him on.
Mr. Neiss, how are you doing, sir?
I am doing just great, Wayne. I appreciate you and Jazz for having me on.
Yes, sir. Not a problem. First off, before we get into anything Bigfoot, I want to thank you for your service for our country. Thank you very much, sir.
Oh, the honor's mine.
Very good. Very good. All right. Todd, you are the founder of the American Primate Conservancy. Tell us, before we get into what got you started and all this, tell us a little bit about your organization, what you've been doing, and how people can find you, and just stuff like that.
Oh, well, thanks for asking. The American Primate Conservancy was founded in 2015, and it really was a collaboration between my original group and my wife's stalking hominid research. And we thought, we got married. I got married at Beachfoot. We can get into that a little bit later. But anyway, we thought we'd just kind of meld both of our websites into one, and since we're teammates now, and basically the mission statement for the American Primate Conservancy is this: it's a discovery, research, knowledge, recognition, and protection. And obviously those items have to happen in that specific order. Today we've crossed the threshold, I believe, when it comes to discovery. I mean, we've heard of literally thousands and thousands of reports over literally hundreds of years, if not thousands of years, if you get back into Native American lore. But so what's next? Research and the knowledge that's gained through that research. And again, our ultimate goal being to provide some sort of protections for these creatures. But before we can do that, they're going to have to be scientifically recognized and classified as to what we're dealing with. And so that's our goal. We've been very busy putting together different operations or expeditions, if you will. Got a lot more planned. We do spontaneous investigations, like I'm sure you folks do, and just try different things, both conventional things that you would do to look for any particular animal, when you're out hunting and whatnot. And then we try a few things outside the box, some more unconventional things. Nobody's got it right yet, so we try different things, different theories, with some results, and we affiliate with some other groups out there, with the Olympic Project, for instance. I'm also a founding member of Project Blue, Zoo Book, rather, which you may know about, out of Ohio. And our point with Zoo Book and another group that I've helped found called SHARE, Sasquatch Hunters Academic Research Exchange, is to try to get these groups, these different individuals, different groups, to share their information and put it in an open source sort of format to where anybody can be able to get out there and look at other people's work. And then the real big issue, and these two organizations I just mentioned, the real goal there is to bridge that gap between amateur researchers and the mainstream scientific academia. And that's no small task, I'm sure you know. But obviously, we can't expect mainstream science to lower their standards to get to, to our level, but rather we need to find ways to raise our standards to a scientific level, so that if we're talking about any animal, whether it be an amphibian or a bird or whatever, we should be able to pull that name, Bigfoot or Sasquatch, out of that template and plug in, this rare bullfrog or whatever have you. But it should make just as much sense as to have Bigfoot in there. But we've got to find, what we're doing is searching for particular SOPs, if you will, that rise to the level of scientific approval. So those are some of the things we're working on. We've recently opened up a indigenous people's division within the Conservancy. I think it's important that we look at Native American approach to the question. I mean, let's face it, Europeans have been here, hardly more than 300 years, and Native Americans have been established here anywhere from 17 to 19,000 years. So who best to know the ins and outs of these creatures than those people that have had to literally live symbiotically with these things for
absolutely
millennia. So that's been a really interesting study for me as well. But that's kind of what we're doing, trying to get the word out, and we'll go around to different conferences and whatnot and talk about our plans. And yeah, it's fascinating. We're just hitting the tip of the iceberg, really.
It's really, really cool. Yeah, you hit on a lot of really interesting things there, and one of them that really stuck out to me was my whole reason for starting this group, Mannimal, was, well, first of all, the reason I started my own group was due to all the negativity that I was seeing in the other bigger, more well-known groups. All the animosity, the bashing of other researchers and things like that. And I'm not going to do that. I don't want any part of it. So that's why I did it. But what I'm looking for in our group is, just like you said, what you're wanting to do is protect these things, because we're taking away their habitat. There's a reason the encounters over the last 20, 25 years have been on a rise. It's because we're going further and further into their area. We're building more and more neighborhoods. We're these multi-million-dollar cabins, out in the woods that people are roughing it out there.
Mm-hmm.
That we're encroaching in their territory. They're not going to have any room left if we keep doing what we're doing. So,
Well, and I think it's important too I hear a lot of people when they hear about this concept of protecting them. Some people will say, well, they don't need protection. They're doing fine without us. Just leave them alone, kind of thing. Well, that's kind of great in a perfect world, but it doesn't answer the question: what is the health of the species as a whole? How many are estimated to be out there? What are their habitats? What are their specific resources within those habitats that they need? What sort of range do they have per individual, for instance? There's a lot of questions out there that remain to be answered. And unless you can answer those questions for me, then you can't, seriously say that they're fine. We don't know that. And truth of the matter is, until we get something on the books, it's open season right now. There's nothing out there that's going to stop anybody from shooting one, and there's no real penalty for doing so.
is your organization your organization that you founded? Are you guys pro kill?
No, we're not. I have found over the years, using different technologies, have sought ways to be able to prove their existence in other ways. For instance, in 1998, I put on the second expedition I had done. I had, as part of my duration team, Peter Byrne and Ron Moorhead. And what we did was get our hands on a biopsy dart gun. Basically, it's a tranquilizer gun retrofitted with biopsy darts. And for your listeners that may not be familiar with biopsy darts, imagine a hollow needle and cutting the pointed tip off of that. So now you just have a round opening. That opening is razor sharp. Inside the needle are some very small micro barbs that face inward. Okay. So the object is, if you can get in range of one of these creatures and hit it with this dart gun, it basically just hits, penetrates, and falls out, allowing the creature to go on their way, no harm, no foul. And in the process, it takes a very small sample of their tissue, the epidermis, the dermis, the fatty tissue, some muscle, blood. And that's one passive way that we can obtain DNA samples. I mean, DNA is going to be the ultimate arbiter as to what we're dealing with, and then there's also the possibility of finding a carcass. Some would say it's already happened, but then what becomes of it? And there's a right way and a wrong way to deal with it. And if and when that time comes, we have people lined up, very renowned geneticists, laboratories, anthropologists, biologists, zoologists, all available in the wing. So just kind of a standby team. But there's ways to do it without having to kill one. Our main objective, again, is, we're between that knowledge and recognition stage. And it's interesting, if you look into the whole idea behind getting recognition, there's a couple things I would like to point out. One is that the 1973 Endangered Species Act, it's a long read, and I've gone through it, and there's a section in there that allows for the recognition of a species without specifically having a type specimen on hand. There's other ways to do it. So that's here nationally. Internationally, there's a group called the Union of Conservation, it's the IUCN, International Union of Conservation of Nature. They're based out of Stockholm, Sweden, and their job is to monitor all species in terms of what their health is, and more specifically endangered species. And there's 9 different levels of endangerment, if you will, not just threatened or endangered, but there's 9 different levels on what they call the red list. And they're the international body that's tasked with actually giving that official blessing on the existence of a creature that's yet unknown or recognized. And they actually are the ones that will give it a binomial taxonomic name, like Homo sapien or Homo erectus or whatever. So in their 9 different levels, there are 2 levels that, again, don't require a type specimen. And again, there's different evidence that they require. But so, yeah, that's a long way of getting around to, I guess, that we are not advocating killing any of these creatures. Frankly, as far as I'm concerned, they're more human than they are ape, I would say. So,
Todd, I got a question for you, man. Since you retired from military, right?
Yes, I retired in May of 2019, so just less than 2 years.
Okay. Well, with you've been out in the area, out in Washington and Oregon area, and knowing that I've seen it where they have had, which I think Georgia has it too now, that they have in law for protection of these things, of the creature, and the fines and everything else. Do you believe that? In my parts of working in law enforcement, I know that you got to go through litigation.
Litigation.
There you go. To get certain laws in thing and have evidence of it. Mm-hmm. Do you believe out in that area where you're from? When them having that in the books, someone somewhere in the military or the federal, somewhere federal has either had a body or something?
Well, that's an interesting question. I mean, there's you mentioned some statutes out there that, for instance, in the state of Washington, back in the 70s, there was a law put on the books in Skamania County, Washington. I think it was done mostly tongue in cheek, but it did get a lot of press, and it had they were trying to address the fact that they knew there were a lot of people getting out in that county, especially in the Gifford-Pinchot National Forest, and so they decided to capitalize on it. Again, I think it was mostly for publicity. Interestingly enough, the Army Corps of Engineers put out a map.
I was just writing that down, Todd. Sorry to interrupt you. I was just
no
writing
worries.
it down so I wouldn't forget to ask you about that, because I'm glad you're bringing that up, because this is very interesting to me. Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, I'm an old Army engineer myself, so the Corps of Engineers put out a map base. I think it was kind of supposed to be carried with soldiers in case they got turned around. And on that map, it showed all the different types of creatures they may encounter. And ironically, there's a Bigfoot on there. And that's on a government document. Do I think there's a conspiracy to hide their existence? No, I don't. But when it comes to I'm not the first person, I'll admit, to try to get some protections in place. I know both here in the United States as well as Canada, attempts have been made, but they've fallen on deaf ears, and usually don't even see the light of day. What we're trying to do here with the Conservancy is a little different angle on this thing. Like I said, the Native Americans have dealt with these things over millennia and have passed down information from generation to generation on them. It's part of their culture, this relationship between them and these other beings. In fact, they don't refer to them as your standard animal. In fact, in my research, I found that they refer to them basically as another tribe, and they're respected in that way. They call them the old ones, or they call them the first ones, because obviously they were here before even the Native Americans that we know and understand came on the scene. So with that in mind, I've been working on a project that involves First Nations tribes, mainly on reservations where they have their own autonomy. I think it's a much easier sell, if you will, to Native Americans or First Nations people, the indigenous people of North America, to get them to take the first step in acknowledging their existence and putting in place protections, and that includes penalties, monetary and perhaps imprisonment, because they have their own autonomy and their own laws on their property, on their reservations. There's nothing stopping them from going forward. And it not only serves to protect these animals, but it also elevates their own culture. And so I think it'd be so I'm working with 5 tribes right now between Alaska, Washington, and Oregon, and actually Nebraska. I've already put together a draft proposal, a template, if you will, where they can plug and play their tribal name, their reservation, and whatever it is they call them. For instance, in Nebraska, they call them Sitanga. In Alaska, they call them Pishtakas. So they can put it in however they want, but what it does is basically is their way of saying we not just believe these things exist, we know these things exist. They are a people like us, and we're putting into effect a law that's going to, give them those protections. And I think as we get these North American tribes involved and other tribes and reservations hear of this, I think it'll catch on like wildfire, really, between these different tribes. They've got nothing to lose and everything to gain, as do our big friends. So once that's in place, then I think we can take it over to the non-native civilian side, if you will, and say, look, you've got 100,000 tribal elders out there that have already signed on to this. So in effect, it makes it a little easier, if you will, for non-native. In our case, I don't know what the Canadian equivalent is, but we would have to go through the Department of the Interior, who is in charge of Fish and Wildlife and the Forest Service and all that. But I think it'd be easier for the Department of the Interior to say, you know what, they're all doing it. There's no there's less risk of ridicule or backlash from taxpayers, because now we've got the ball rolling. So that's something that we've been working on with the Conservancy as well.
Okay, Todd, like we've mentioned, you are retired military. Is it the Army? Was the Army the branch of military you were in?
Yes.
Let me tell you a little bit about what happened to us and our group, and it involved Mr. Walls there, Jasper Walls directly. We went up on, this was last year sometime. We went up on what was going to be a 2-night expedition, very, very, very deep in the Blue Ridge Mountains. We got up there and got settled in and was getting ready to do our thing, and we started hearing gunfire in the distance, like rapid gunfire. And one of the members of our group said, well, the military, they do training exercises up here. So we figured that's what it was. And about an hour or so later, the army, soldiers roll in on us. And this one gentleman, I forget his rank, but he was a younger guy, probably in his mid-20s. He came up to us, me specifically. He was very professional, very nice, very pleasant, and he told us, he said, introduced himself, we're here doing some training. You heard the gunfire. You're going to hear a little bit more. 45 minutes tops, we will be out of your hair. And we'll be completely gone. We'll wrap it up. So we're like, yeah, that's fine. We heard the gunfire, exchanged some pleasantries and everything. And then Gooberhead there, Mr. Jasper Walls, decided to ask him right before he was going to leave. And I'm telling you all this just to get your opinion.
Sure.
Just before he turned around to leave, Walls asked him, he says, well, let me tell you what we're doing. He says, have you ever noticed or seen anything weird or strange up here that shouldn't be? And he said, no. I mean, we've seen like cougar or bobcats or something like that, big cats and stuff. And Wall said, well, we're Bigfoot people. We're up here on an expedition. We're looking for Bigfoot. And I'll be completely honest with you. If I hadn't seen this with my own eyes, I wouldn't, I probably wouldn't believe it. But this guy's whole demeanor changed. He went from being very pleasant, very talkative to very, very matter of fact. His whole attitude changed. He looked back at his commanding officer, because he pointed out which one was, and gave him a look, and then just ended the conversation, just cut it off and walked back over there. And I'm telling you, they did not leave that night. They stayed there all night long. They did. They finished their exercise, and then we noticed them gathering firewood. And we started seeing headlamps all around us, all in the woods, moving around because it was getting dark. They didn't leave. They stayed there all night long and made it very, very uncomfortable on us. Why would that happen?
Well, are you suggesting they had no intention of staying there until they talked to you?
That's what he told us. He told us, he said, 45 minutes, we'll be out of your hair. We'll be gone. We'll be done. And then he brings up Bigfoot and everything changes.
I don't know. They may have had some flexibility with regard to where they bivouacked that particular night, but perhaps what you told them was enough that got their interest to say, hey, this is as good as any other place, and these guys are poking around for Bigfoot. So, we call it a frago, or a fragmented order. You can change things in mid-stride if something comes up, and you have to have that flexibility. But it's interesting. There's stories of military encountering these things, from the rock apes of Vietnam to even up here at Fort Lewis, now called Joint Base Lewis McChord, just south of Seattle. And they have a vast base there that goes right up to the slopes of Mount Rainier. So it's a huge tract of land up there that they do work in, and I've heard instances of special forces guys going in there and having some encounters of various kinds. I think I've heard at least probably 3 different stories that came out of there. and other bases as well. You know, it does. You know, I've always said that you don't find Bigfoot; Bigfoot finds you, and it seems to run pretty true. I mean, you think about it; these things are jungle smart, if you will, as opposed to street smart. But we've got nothing on them when it comes to their territory, their habitat. They know what's out there, and I can only imagine they have a pretty good enhanced sense of hearing and smell.
Yeah.
They know what's natural and what's not, and they know when we're in the area long before we know they're there. It's a very unusual circumstance when somebody that's out there looking for Bigfoot actually finds one that isn't first aware of their existence. Most of the times when people see them, it's they realize that they're being watched.
And
One exception would probably be the '67 Patterson Gimlin footage taken in Bluff Creek, California. I've been there a few times, and my take on that, there were a couple of advantages that Roger and Bob had, and that was they were on horses.
Yep.
And anybody will tell you that's ever hunted on horseback, you get a lot closer to animals on horseback than you would on feet. Yep. Secondly, I think she was originally seen squatting down by Bluff Creek, possibly drinking out of the creek, and so that water, being that close to that water, is going to mask their approach as well. They got very, very lucky, but they worked for it. They really did. I know Bob personally, and I have no doubt they saw what they saw, and that the video is legitimate.
Yeah. What I believe is like you said, you can get closer. If you're on horseback, and one, I mean, the horse is going to go really, really far in masking your smell. And one of the reasons I think Patty was out in the open was she smelled a horse. And she thought, well, horses aren't supposed to be up here. So she was coming out to investigate. It's just my opinion. Obviously, it's speculation. That she was coming out to speculate, and then she's, oh, crap, there's men on those horses. And then that's when she turns around and hightails it out of there. Just my opinion.
Could be.
But also, just going back to what I was saying about our experience, about a month or so after that, we had Mr. Ken Gerard on our program and talked to him a little bit about that experience because it was still new and fresh and everything. And he told us about a gentleman that I think he put it in one of his books, a gentleman and a retired military man. He was in the Army. He was stationed in North Georgia. Told him that they did all of their training in the Blue Ridge Mountains, and in their field guide, they had a field guide that told them what to do if they encountered a Sasquatch. So, but the man wouldn't let him use his name and all that good stuff. But I found that really interesting.
Well, as do I. I mean, I spent over 20 years in the military, and I'll tell you, maybe we should get on to my encounter story to make it make a little more sense. But I'll tell you, after having my encounter that I had, I got a little cheeky and decided to make a little flyer, if you will. And when nobody's looking, when I was in the armory, I stuck it up on the bulletin board, and I can tell you that didn't last more than about 2 minutes. But that's for official business only, so I can see why that might have happened. But I was like, I kind of wondered how long it would stay up there. It wasn't very long. I've had people ask me, have you had any concern about your coming public with your encounter experience and your research when it comes to the Army? And I can tell you initially I was a little concerned because I had a good reputation. I was a non-commissioned officer in the military at the time, a family man, and then at that particular time, I was in the National Guard. And so I had a daytime job. I was a vice president of a shipping company here in Portland, and just would go off one weekend a month like a traditional guardsman would do. But yeah, I got kind of concerned about it. But over time, because golly, that was be almost 28 years next week that I had that particular sighting. And
Well, Todd,
trust me, a lot of people in the Army knew about it, and yeah, they might tease me about it, but it wasn't a big deal.
That's a good segue, man. If you want to, let's go ahead and get into that. That kind of started it off for you, didn't it?
Well, it did, and I'll tell you this: growing up in the Pacific Northwest, and I was born and raised here, you can't help but hear these stories about Bigfoot, Sasquatch, what have you. It became such a common theme that I really to me, I never studied the subject. I was never interested in it. I never read a book on it. I don't know that I watched many shows on the subject. I was kind of neutral, if you will. So, and I spent a lot of time out in the woods. I hunt deer and elk, bear, cougar. I fish a lot, and to me, at that time, I'm 34 years old. I don't recall ever coming across any evidence, and so that all changed for me. It was April 3rd, 1993, a Saturday. I'd reported to duty the night before, and this particular drill, this training event we had, I think I mentioned I was a combat engineer, and a lot of what we do as combat engineers is using high explosives for various reasons. And this particular day, we had permission by a timber company that owned quite a large holding of land. We had permission to go into their property and utilize these gravel quarries that they had spread out throughout their holdings. When they punched in roads, they would just, make their own gravel and gravel those out. So we would do these training exercises in these quarries, mainly because it was safer there. You didn't have to worry about starting a forest fire or anything. Everything was kind of contained in that gravel pit. So we had 3 particular sites that day, different training scenarios, if you will. The first site, we did cutting charges with plastic explosives, C4, cutting steel I-beams in half to basically simulate taking out a bridge, if you will. The second site, we had a mock minefield with anti-tank mines, training mines. And our job was to lay out what we call ring mains of det cord and tie in to C4 blocks of plastic explosive and set them near these mines in order to blow a path through the minefield, again, simulating being able to overcome that obstacle to get our troops through. The last training exercise at a third separate site was a cratering charge. And this is, again, simulating blowing a road in half. I think we had about 250 pounds of ammonium nitrate that we'd been soaking in diesel fuel for several hours. And so we got everything in place. We put our blasting caps into the ammonium nitrate, set our fuses, and standard operating procedure. Obviously, light the fuses, get in, get to the rigs, and get out of there. We had 4 vehicles in that particular convoy. 2 Humvees up front, a deuce and a half or 2.5 ton covered troop transport, and then the commander's Humvee in the back. I specifically was in the second Humvee between the first Humvee and the troop transport. As a passenger, I was sitting behind the driver, and it was a really nice day, especially for April in the Coast Range. So I had the window unzipped and my arm hanging out. And as we're heading down this very windy, narrow logging road, I was doing what I naturally would do. I was looking for deer, elk, whatever, looking for wildlife. Well, be careful what you ask for, because we came around this corner, a long sweeping clockwise corner, and the trees kind of parted and gave me a full direct view of the second blast site, the one that we had detonated at maybe an hour earlier. And what struck me was, here, standing right in the middle of that second quarry, were these 3 large, dark figures. And they were definitely standing on 2 legs, and they were watching us across this ravine. And the more I look at, my first thought is, what the hell are those people doing down there? But hardly finished the thought, I realized these aren't people at all. Their silhouettes were completely different than a human. For instance, the length of these arms were incredible. They went down between I would say they were between the knee and the ankle. And I don't believe they were stooped over. The legs were way too long as well. The head sat square on these massive shoulders, as if it didn't have a neck, like as if the trapezoids were just coming right off the ears straight to the shoulder. It was just built like bodybuilders. I mean, we're talking not just broad shoulders, but a big barreled chest, a very noticeable taper down to the waist. They looked like bodybuilders times, they were huge. They weren't wearing any clothing. You would have been able to see that. It was broad daylight. They were just, if they weren't pitch black, they were extremely dark brown. But what really struck me was the one that stood in the middle of these other 2. The one in the middle was probably close to 9 feet high, I estimate. The 2 on either side of it came up to its shoulders, so I would say 7.5 feet high. And while that one big guy in the middle just stood there like a statue, it just absolutely did not move. The 2 on either side of it that flanked the bigger one were rocking back and forth, shifting weight from foot to foot, and in the process, these long pendulous arms were swinging across below their knees. And they did that the entire time. I'm watching them. And speaking of time, this was not a 2 to 3, 5 second something ran across the road in 2 steps in front of my car thing. I watched them for approximately 25 seconds is what I'd estimate. In 25 seconds, people think, oh, that's nothing. But I mean, seriously, look at your watch for 25 seconds.
Yeah.
You're going to get anxious for, okay, are we there yet? But no, especially when you're seeing what I was seeing. I saw them very clearly. And like I say, this behavior of these 2, I even hate to use the word smaller, but these 2 creatures flanking the largest one, from the very get-go, it was this back and forth swinging like this. And I talked to a primatologist, Dr. Henner Fehrenbach, about that behavior. And he says it's very typical primate behavior when they're feeling anxious or threatened. He says, you'll see it sometimes at the zoos. They'll just do this back and forth, rocking back and forth. So he said it makes sense. I mean, that they would feel anxious or threatened, especially when you just were detonating bombs in their backyard. So anyway, we turned that corner. I lost sight of them and just kind of slumped back in my seat and tried to register what I just saw. A few minutes later, we get down to the safety staging area where we would, be out of harm's way. We'd wait for the explosion and then go back up and check our work. Well, when we got to that staging area, I immediately hopped out of my Humvee and jogged back up the direction we had just come from, hoping that I could get another view of them. And I went as far as I dared. I could not leave by SOP. I could not leave the sight of the rest of the group. Got as far as I dared. I'm looking off into the wilderness, trying to see what I just saw. And unfortunately, there was a little bit of a hill between me and where I stood and these things. But that's when it got even more interesting, because while I'm standing there looking off in the distance, standing on my tiptoes, I hear somebody yell out my name. And I look over, and here's a buddy of mine, Sergeant Martin. And I said, "What?" And he goes, "What are you looking at?" I said, "Nothing." And he just kept coming. Got up to where I was at. He was smoking on a cigarette, and he goes, "I don't suppose you saw what I saw down at that second blast site." And I didn't know anybody else had seen it. I just assumed I was the only one that had seen it. And I go, "I don't know, Jeff, what did you see?" And he takes a drag off a cigarette and looks left and right to make sure nobody else is in earshot. And he goes, "I saw 3 dark, hair-covered, Bigfoot, I guess." And with that, I was like, "Oh my God!" And I'm like, "Yeah, I saw him too." And it's not that I needed any corroboration for what I saw. I can't unsee what I saw that day, nor would I want to. I can see it as clearly now as if it were yesterday. But it was nice to know that, somebody else got to see, somebody else shared that with me. And then, again, being a traditional guardsman and having our training 1 weekend a month, it would come to be that the next month in May, we had 2 more soldiers, independent of one another, also confessed to witnessing what Jeff and I had seen. So
Wow.
It's an unusual, again, and who knows how many more may have seen it and just never said anything. But it's a unique sighting on a number of levels. One, obviously, just the nature of what we were doing, blowing up the woods. But multiple animal sightings are fairly rare when it comes to sightings, and then multi-animal, multi-eye witnesses coupled with what we were doing, it's just an interesting combination of events that made that happen. So I've been looking ever since. Was that my only encounter with these creatures? I would have to say no. Was it my only visual encounter? Yes, because that might have changed here last November. But as you know, encounters come in different forms, whether they be visual, audible. I heard Jasper talking about hearing sounds, tree knocks, and all kinds of crazy vocalizations, whistles, things like that. There's even encounters, of people you've heard of the smell that these things seem to generate. And I've actually had that experience once, which was enough for me. But probably the closest experience I had was in that expedition in '98, again with Ron Moorhead and Peter Byrne, we were at the base of Saddle Mountain, which is not far from where I had my sighting. Ron had flown in his private plane, and we were hoping to use that to do some aerial reconnaissance, but the weather was just horrible. And so we never was able to use the plane. And on about day 6 of day 8, Ron said, I hate to do this, but I got a break in the weather and I'd like to try to take advantage of it and fly out of here. So, so he did that. Peter took him down, leaving me by myself at the base camp. And I'm like, you know what? I had borrowed a set of seismic ground sensors from the North American Science Institute, who, by the way, are the same people that loaned us that tranquilizer gun. And I hadn't emplaced these ground sensors. I have a set of 4 myself, and I had put those in the ground. But I still had this set of 8 that I'd borrowed. I thought, this is perfect time. They're going to be gone a couple hours. I'm going to go put them above the base camp up in this reprod area. So I took the kit up there and I'm starting to put it in, and sure enough, here comes a hailstorm, and I could see it and hear it coming. And I thought, I'm too far from the base camp, but to make it down there before this hits. So I decided to hike up into the old growth, huge 200-foot tall Doug firs, and just use them as an umbrella and wait this thing out. And so I did. I left the equipment where it was at. I walked up about 100 yards up into the old growth, and I had to answer the call of nature. So I did, and I was just buckling up my belt when I heard the most god-awful screaming roar. I could go the rest of my life not hearing it again, but it was very close, less than 100 feet away. Probably 120 decibels. And you know what, Wayne? I almost can guarantee what set it off. And that's just because I just peed in its territory. And I think that was a little too much for it. But this thing, I swear to God, I could not move for 2 minutes straight. 2 minutes later, my hand's still on my belt buckle, and I don't think I'd even blinked. And I have never been so scared in my life. I honestly thought, this is it. I'm like, whatever you are, just get it over with and make it quick. The only analogy I can come up with is, imagine being in an airplane at 20,000 feet and somebody shoves you out the door without a parachute. You got 2 minutes of watching the ground coming up to you. You're not going to make it. It's the most helpless feeling I've ever felt. And this is somebody who's been shot at, and small arms, large arms, mortars, rockets. That's the closest analogy I can come up with. It's just like, it's over. It would take a miracle to save you, and it's just a matter of time. And I told that to a buddy of mine who had a similar experience in Washington State, and he got froze, paralyzed with fear, if you will. And when I told him I've never felt so helpless in my life, he goes, "No, dude, not helpless." And I go, "What?" He goes, "Hopeless."
Wow.
And when he said that, I went, bingo. You're right. It wasn't that I was lacking help. I had lost all hope. And so I've gotten close several times over the years. I just returned from a very interesting investigation in Nebraska, of all places, and was treated by a native some native friends of mine on the Omaha reservation who took me out.
It wasn't Barry Webster, was it?
Might be. Yeah, it was Barry. But he took me out. He took me out 5 nights in a row. And really, I should say mornings, because we didn't even start till about midnight. And we'd be out till sometimes 2, 3 in the morning. Nobody else out there, pitch black. And I had seen some of his videos before. I've known him for a couple of years online. But when he invited me out there, I got on the next plane and I spent a week out there. But the last 5 nights I was there, we went out to not just 1, but 2 locations, and never disappointed. Have you been out there yourself?
No, I had, the other night when, we talked briefly about you being on Gary Robusto's show the other night. While you were on with them, Barry was on here. So I was
cool.
talking to Barry, and it's the second time that we've had Barry on, and I actually talked to him about coming out there. He said I was.
You really should, because I'm telling you, and that's really not what I expected when I flew out there. But I am so glad that he shared that with me. But the things I experienced out there, I'm still having difficulty wrapping my arms around it. I know what I saw. I know what I heard. It wasn't just, we had the whole eye shine thing back in the woods. I can't explain it outside of what he says or claims it is. But we had vocalizations that accompanied it as well that were absolutely beyond the capabilities of any known animals. It was just a fantastic investigation, and so that's another form of encounter. So
it's a small world, ain't it?
Yes, it is. It's getting smaller all the time.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's how that's how I got involved. By tested by fire, I guess, and I've been looking ever since. But I have to say this, Wayne and Jasper, what strikes me looking back on all this, 28 years of research, what blows my mind is it only took 25 seconds of my entire adult life at that time. 25 seconds that I could have been looking the other direction. I could have been on the other side of the Humvee where I wouldn't be able to see down to that other quarry. We could have been 5 minutes earlier or 5 minutes later, and they may not have been there. I can't help but think that there was a purpose, a reason why I was blessed to see what I saw. And, so for the last 28 years, I've been really trying to find that purpose. And I think we're well on our way through the Conservancy and our ambitions there.
That's a really, really cool way to look at it. So it really is. Just thinking, and you're absolutely right. If you'd been looking in a different direction or on seated in a different spot, you wouldn't be sitting here talking to us tonight, probably.
I wouldn't be talking to you. I wouldn't be living where I'm living.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be married to the woman I'm married to.
That's amazing.
To meet all the amazing people I've met over those years, I've many of them who've passed away. I knew John Green and Renee Hennon and Professor Grover Krantz and John Bindernagel, and they're all gone. Thank God Peter's still with us, and I keep in touch with him regularly. Lives here in Oregon. But all the just amazing folks that have come into my life, all because of that 25 seconds. It's just amazing. You know, when God gives you an opportunity like that, if you just bury it and sit on it, then you miss the boat. You know,
Awesome.
if you can't act on that, you know, I just found myself saying, why me? Why me? And now I know.
That's a really, really, really good place to end it right there, Todd. Yeah, very well said, buddy. I would like to have you back, though. I feel like there's a lot more we could talk about if you wouldn't mind.
Yes. You bet, brother. I'd love to have you guys come out here. I'd love to show you around.
It would be awesome, man. If you're inviting us, we will stay in touch and we'll work it out somehow.
Well, you know, I have an annual gathering called Beachfoot. I don't know if you've heard of it before, but it's a private. Yeah, it's this year will be our 14th annual gathering of Bigfoot researchers from around the world. Like I say, it's invitation only, and there's no public invited. You can't buy a ticket to get in. There's no press. There's no vendors or anything like that. It's just really a very low-key, casual retreat, if you will, for international researchers. And we've had them from Australia, England, Russia, New Zealand, and all across the U.S. and Canada come in. I'd be more than happy to send you guys an invite if you'd like to come out.
I would be honored. I really would.
Okay. It'll be the last weekend in June. So I think the 24th through the 27th, it's actually a 4-day deal. Frankly, Thursday and Sunday are kind of pack in and pack out days. But we're there for 4 days and 3 nights. We have huge bonfires, and you'll meet everybody who's anybody in Bigfooting there has been there at one time or another, and we'd love to have you. So I'll see what I can do about get you an invite.
Thank you very much. That would be an honor, man. It really would. I would appreciate it.
All right. Well, thanks for having me.
Yes,
that went
sir.
by quick. I'd be more than happy to come on another time.
Yeah, it always flies by once you get talking about something that you're passionate about. And I'm serious. I would like to have you back because there's a lot more that we could go into. And I really do appreciate it, buddy. It was an honor.
Well, thank you for having me. You guys take care.
Have a nice evening, sir. How about that? Just got invited to Beachfoot.
That's pretty cool.
That's awesome. I wasn't expecting that. Very, very cool. I've heard a lot about Beachfoot. That's awesome, man.
We're out there. That's in Washington.
Yeah, that's on the other side of the country.
Let's fly out there.
Yeah. Well, I'm not gonna drive.
Well, we could drive. Flying might be a little trouble.
Yeah.
I might get kicked off the airplane.
Oh man, how cool was that show, man? Really, really, really good show.
That was a good one, and we got 2 thumbs down.
2?
Yeah. Yeah. I was like, really?
Wow, it's all right. We had 1 before the show even started, so that don't count.
I know.
Haters gonna hate. Had that one lady. I don't know what her problem was. She told me she wasn't a hater. That was the worst show we ever did. And I thought, I mean, how do you know? You gave a thumbs down before the show started.
Right.
That's the kind of people we're up against, man.
Well,
but thank you for your subscription, Mr. and Mrs. Thumbs Down.
Yeah.
We appreciate that. All right, man. Let's get off here.
All right, man. I gotta get up early for this time.
I gotta be up in just a few hours. So
yeah, but let me know about Saturday, dude. And I'll like I said, I'll be coming back from Pikeville.
No, maybe you'll be able to come on with us on Thursday, do your job.
I can't help but work.
All right, man.
I offered. I said I can do it on work. I got hands free.
Say your goodbyes so we can get out of here.
All right, guys. Appreciate y'all coming in. Be safe out there, guys, and be good.
Yes, sir. Thanks, guys. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. All the support that you give us week in, week out. You guys are awesome. We appreciate it. Thank you for everything that you do. Guys, take care of each other. Be good to each other. And we will see you next time. See you guys.